Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a focused learner who's really trying to maximize your potential, you are in exactly the right place today. We're putting together what is basically the ultimate science-backed operating manual for your own mind. We're going to break down the actual neurobiology of how you can learn anything, whether that's complex math or a brand new language, faster, deeper, and with way less wasted effort. So let's get into it. Here's our mental map for today. We'll start with the biology of timing, move into the neuroplasticity protocol, contrast good versus bad studying, dive into the power of NSDR, and finally wrap up with sleep and memory consolidation. All right, part one, the biology of timing. This is where we lay down the biological foundations. So the most crucial point to understand right out of the gate is that learning isn't some kind of magic. It is a very real physical rewiring of your brain. It's a process called neuroplasticity. Whenever you learn something new, you are literally physically changing the connections between your neurons. But here's the catch. This process isn't just about sheer willpower. It relies heavily on your biology, and that starts with exactly when you choose to sit down and study. Now, some really fascinating data shows that your academic success isn't just about whether you're a morning lark or a night owl. It's actually about something called rhythm distinctness. Basically, how rigidly you stick to whatever your biological rhythm is. You know, larks benefit incredibly from having strong, strict daily routines. But if you're an owl, a rigid schedule actually hurts you. You need a weaker, much more flexible rhythm just to combat the social jet lag of living in a world that's entirely built for early risers. So finding your personal optimal window, that is step one. Moving right along to part two, the neuroplasticity protocol, or as some call it, the super protocol. Because you really can't just sit down at a desk and expect your brain to instantly learn. First, you've got to get alert. Believe it or not, taking 25 to 30 deep breaths literally releases a spike of adrenaline in your brain and body. Second, you have to get focused. Simply staring at a single visual point on a wall or even your screen for 30 to 60 seconds, that actively engages neural circuits that involve acetylcholine, which is a neurochemical absolutely vital for sharp focus. Basically, mental focus follows visual focus. Only after doing that do you move to step 3 and actually start generating your repetitions. Okay, part 3, good versus bad studying. It is time to shatter some illusions. Let's take a look at what a perfectly optimized study block actually looks like. You'll notice it culminates at exactly 90 minutes, and there's a good reason for that. Solid scientific research shows that 90 minutes is the absolute biological limit we possess for maintaining intense, neuroplastic focus. Honestly, anything beyond that in a single sitting, and you're just spinning your wheels. You're completely tapped out. And during those 90 minutes, we absolutely have to dismantle the myth of passive rereading. If you're just casually running your eyes over a page or glancing at your old highlights, you're literally just fooling your brain into thinking you know the material. It feels familiar, but it's an illusion. If you aren't using active recall, which means physically looking away and forcing your brain to generate those ideas from within, you are, quite frankly, wasting your time. When we look at Dr. Barbara Oakley's rules, we get a crystal clear picture of what active studying actually looks like in practice. For instance, you should chunk problems. That means practicing a solution over and over until you can rehearse it smoothly in your mind, kind of like singing a favorite song. And you really should use explanatory questioning. If you're struggling with a tough concept, make up a simple analogy, like, I don't know, comparing the flow of electricity to the flow of water. The actual effort of speaking that analogy out loud deeply encodes those memories right into your brain. On the flip side, you've got to avoid these terrible habits. Please do not cram, and do not repeatedly solve the exact same type of problem once you already know how to do it. Think about it. That's like preparing for a massive basketball game by only practicing your dribbling. You'd never do that. Remember, your brain is a lot like a muscle. It can only handle a limited amount of exercise on one specific subject at a time. So make sure you're alternating your techniques. Which brings us to a massive mindset shift. We need to completely reframe how friction feels to us. Look, learning is actually supposed to feel painfully hard. When you feel that mental strain, that intense frustration, you shouldn't quit. That strain is the exact biochemical trigger that releases neuromodulators, those chemical signals that basically yell at your nervous system to dial in and literally change its wiring. And embracing that effort means you absolutely shouldn't aim for perfection during your practice. Actually, scratch that. You should deliberately aim for an optimal error rate of about 15%. I know, when you make a mistake, it feels really stressful, right? But computationally speaking, that stress causes a spike in attention that primes your forebrain. Making mistakes literally puts your brain in a much better state to absorb the correct information on your very next attempt. Now, to really maximize those attempts, try randomly inserting 10-second micro rests right into the middle of your study session. And I mean literally stop and do absolutely nothing for 10 whole seconds. Research shows that during these tiny random pauses, your hippocampus actually replays the learning sequence you just did, but at a rate 10 to 30 times faster in the background. It is essentially rapid-fire neural repetitions entirely for free. When you combine all these tactics, you get the ultimate daily habits of top-performing students. They block out time to study completely alone, entirely unreachable, and totally free of digital distractions. They eat their frogs first, meaning they tackle their absolute hardest subject when they are most fresh. And finally, they solidify their mastery by teaching the concepts to other people, which proves they haven't just memorized a bunch of facts, but truly, deeply understood them. All right, moving to part 4, the power of NSDR. Let's talk about post-learning recovery. This brings us to a really fascinating biological loophole in our explainer. We all know sleep is vital, right? But how can we lock in these new neural connections right now, right in the middle of the day, immediately after our 90-minute study session ends? Well, the answer is NSDR, which stands for non-sleep deep rest. Coined by Dr. Andrew Huberman, this is a completely zero-cost tool. By just listening to a guided 10 to 30-minute audio script of focused breathing and body scanning, you intentionally push your brain into a liminal state. You're hovering right on that edge between wakefulness and sleep. And it is in this exact peculiar state that neural rewiring rapidly accelerates. The sheer neurochemical power of doing absolutely nothing is honestly staggering. To put it into perspective, a simple NSDR session can increase your brain's baseline dopamine levels by up to 65%. That is huge. It completely clears out the mental fatigue, washes away the stress of the intense effort you just put in, and fully restores your motivation and focus for the rest of your day. And finally, part 5, sleep and memory consolidation. Here is the absolute most crucial point of everything we've talked about today. That grueling 90-minute study session, it was only the trigger. The actual physical rewiring of your neural circuits exclusively happens while you are deeply asleep that night. If you decide to pull an all-nighter or you suffer from prolonged fatigue, toxins literally build up in your brain and disrupt those delicate new connections. As Dr. Oakley puts it, if you don't sleep, nothing else you've done will matter. Period. Sleep is, without a doubt, the ultimate nootropic. So, by honoring your specific circadian timing, triggering focus through breathing, embracing the friction of a 15% error rate, utilizing micro rests and NSDR, and fiercely protecting your sleep, you now possess the ultimate biological toolkit. You aren't just studying anymore, you are literally engineering your own neuroplasticity. So, with this operating manual finally in your hands, what incredible complex subject are you going to choose to conquer next?